I tell you what I am concerned about, and that is if Congress and the judiciary doesn't do something soon about the FBI and the Justice Department, we are on our way to becoming a fascist nation and a police state. Our founding fathers never intended us to have a national police force who could just decide to go after people they didn't like. And that's what RICO and mail fraud and some of these other statutes have been used for. Something's got to be done to change that around, or we will not be a free people much longer.
Well, hey, Jonathan.
Well, hey there on this beautiful, beautiful Saturday. It's like 75 degrees out. You couldn't ask for a nicer day.
It's beautiful. I got up this morning and took about a 4-mile walk.
4 miles?
4 miles. I've been doing that almost every day. Yeah. It's making me feel good. Getting more core strength, more leg strength, fewer aches and pains.
Ooh.
Yeah, sleeping better. So all this quarantine walk has been good for me. Now, for those just tuning in, since the quarantine started, you'll notice I got quarantine crazy and shaved my beard off. It's still off. I'll grow it back someday, but I'm letting my face rest. Might even let it get tan some during this quarantine time, my quarantine walks.
That's funny. I'm actually getting used to it now without the beard.
Okay. But I hadn't been to a barbershop now since about 3 months.
Ow.
Yeah. And you know, I'm usually a every 2-week guy.
You're on the spot with it.
Yeah, 3 on the long end. Yeah.
What's great too is your barber is right next door to the office, so you just.
I do. Yeah. Yeah, I go to Ashley Ochoa at Deja Du. It's one door down from our office on Waco Drive. And I've known her grandmother for like years and years and years from over at La Fiesta. That's one of the oldest continuous operating restaurants in town.
Wait.
Them and El Conquistador. I don't know which is actually the oldest.
They're both really good, though.
They're both good. They're both real good. Yeah. So I'm just growing my hair.
There you go.
Jonathan, I've been busier staying at home than I used to be at the office. I know we've talked about this, but at the end of the day, I'm just beat, man.
But you're productive.
Beat. I do a lot more work than I used to.
Yeah. Well, there's nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go. Nothing to do. Might as well keep my shoulder to the plow, my nose to the grindstone.
Speaking of which, I got a beautiful cup of our finest coffee, Vic.
Oh, neat, man.
Henry's glass looks in reverse, obviously, because of the camera, but Henry's glass eye. Get yourself a pouch.
Henry's glass eye. And you know, we sent another bag to MC Yogi. The last time we sent him Victorious, this time we sent him Henry's glass eye. And he's a whole bean guy, like I am. I like to grind mine fresh every morning. And remember, we put a bag of Henry's glass eye in the mail to Gary Richardson.
We did.
He wanted a bag of our coffee, so we sent it to him. And I got a text from him this morning saying, well, I don't drink a lot of coffee, but I decided to have a cup of yours this morning. I thought he was going to say, man, that was good coffee. He said, I opened it up and it was beans. Now I got to go out and buy a grinder.
Shortest spot time between like being able to get the coffee. Like, I don't want to have to grind. I don't want that step. No, this stuff is really, really good though. And I highly recommend to our fan base to get some, especially, I mean, you're stuck.
Yeah.
I'm going to ship you some coffee. This stuff is so good. It's very well priced. And the best part of all, $1 goes towards a charity. And at this time, we're donating towards Proclaim Justice, which is Jason Baldwin's charity.
We've given money to Proclaim Justice and to the Innocence Project.
That's right.
Yeah, about 200 bags so far. A little less than $200 we've contributed. So that's good. Heard from Jason Baldwin the other day. We interviewed him. We have 2 or 3 podcasts with Jason. Jason from the Memphis 3. If you haven't checked out the new movies about the Memphis 3, check those out. They're really, really good. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Waco, the Netflix series. I binge watched that thing because I liked it. Like I said, there are only 2 or 3 things in it I disagreed with.
Yeah.
I really liked it. We've been approached by some of the survivors of the Davidian fire, the attack on the Davidians, I call it.
Yeah, that's more like it.
And probably, I'd like to wait until we can get together because this is worth doing in person. But we have 8 or 9 people, and we reached out to Mr. Thibodeau, and he's going to be on our show as well. So I'm real excited about that.
Yes.
And so we're going to have, sometimes after we can all get back together, an entire series on the Branch Davidians. Oh, by the way, our assistant Casey found that article, the Houston Chronicle article I was talking about from March 2nd, 1993.
Yeah.
So she's going to get that to you, Jonathan, and we can get that up on our website so our listeners can see it. Welcome back, listeners. Man, we're glad to have you. I'm looking up the camera there. We check the numbers every day just about, and we're real happy with the numbers. We're happy with our global saturation. We even have people in New Zealand listening to us now. So that's pretty neat. We're getting all around the world, everywhere except China. Things come out of China, but nothing goes in.
Willy Wonka factory.
So on that March 2nd, 1993 Houston Chronicle, and that was just a few days before the fire, I'm quoted as saying, "The feds are preparing to kill them. That way they can bury their mistakes. It's sad for the Davidians, and it's sad for our country."
Yep.
So we're going to put that up on the website so people can see that I really did predict what was going to happen. I saw it coming because I know that when you confront their egos, when you confront the ego of the deep state, they're going to come back at you hard, just like they did me. They're going to come back at you hard. And David was just pissing them off every day that he wouldn't come out. You know, even where they were playing the pig slaughtering sounds at night, turning off their electricity, screaming Nancy Sinatra songs at them. These boots are made for walking. You know, and there's a line in there that says, and I just found me a brand new box of matches. One of these days you're going to get burned. Oh my God. Was that a prophecy, or were they just warning them what they planned to do?
You have to wonder.
And I will never, 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 never believe that David Koresh or Steve Schneider committed suicide. I just never will. They were too based in Scripture. Now, a lot of it was Old Testament Scripture, but nothing in the Bible sanctions suicide. Right. David would have believed to the very last second. David would have believed until the skin was dripping off his flesh that God would save him, just like he saved Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego when they were thrown into the fiery furnace by the king that they would not bow down to. And David saw this as this attack as an attack by the infidels.
Right.
And he was not going to bow down to them. And he would have believed that God would save him out of there, just like he did the 3 Hebrew children. Remember, the king looked down into the fire. He said, not only did I see 3, I saw a 4th. They were in there talking with someone. Some speculate it was an angel. Some speculate it was Jesus. Some speculate it was hallucinating, and some speculate it never happened. But it's in the Bible. David believed it. Nowhere in the Bible is suicide sanctioned. There's only one reference that I can even remember offhand to suicide in the Bible, and that's when Judas hanged himself after he betrayed Jesus. He just couldn't live with his conscience. Well, David hadn't betrayed anybody out there, and neither had Steve Schneider. They were doing what they thought was right. They were living their own lives the way that they thought they should live it. Granted, it didn't go along with some of our cultural mores of today, but there was no sex abuse of little children going on. There were no children being beaten. Matter of fact, when CPS took some of the children that had been released before the fire. And they said, I can tell by looking. Actually, this made the movie. I can tell by looking at the way they're playing with each other and running around and having a good time. These children have not been abused. And that CPS worker was correct. And that CPS worker had been out to that camp a few times before because of complaints from George Roden and his followers, because they just wanted the land back.
Right.
Remember, we talked about George Roden. He's the one that got in the shootout with them after he was trying to raise Annie from the dead.
Which we have a picture of that too.
We have a picture. Yeah, I think I forgot to mention that when the Davidians were on trial, and I really did not want to prosecute those boys. I didn't. But, George was the one that got hurt. Now, I did not handle that case myself. I assigned it to a brand new prosecutor in my office who had not tried many cases, and let him handle it and just see what would happen. And the jury found them all not guilty. But during that trial, they brought in the casket with Annie in it. They put it in the back of the van, drove it to the courthouse. Those really steep steps in the front, that door used to work before they sealed it off after we went to metal detectors and everything after 9/11. But they carried that thing all the way up those stairs and was going to introduce her and her casket into evidence.
So good.
The court reporter was like, no way, I'm not keeping up with that, because the court reporter usually takes all the exhibits, and has to put them in a file. Well, there's no way you can file away a dead body. Fortunately, County Judge Raymond Mackin heard what was going on. Raymond is dead now, but his wife, Karen, is still alive. She still is in town. She used to be an assistant DA, a very good assistant DA under Felipe. And then she was our county treasurer county clerk for a really long time. But Raymond heard about that, and boy, he just went, pardon my language, but he went apeshit. He said, get that out of my courthouse. That is not going into evidence. And the judge said, yeah, right. Get that out of the criminal judge. Get that out of here. And so there's a great photo of them walking down those steep steps, carrying that box and shoving it back into the van. And when they do, you can see the van go, like the springs on it. It was that heavy. I was afraid they were going to drop that thing and it's going to slide all the way down to Washington Avenue.
There, where the body come out.
Yeah, the body comes out, just like in some of the movies we've seen, where the body comes out of the back of the casket, out of the back of the hearse.
Truth really is stranger than fiction.
It really is sometimes.
Speaking
of truth, though, let's give another shout out to our friends over at MC Art Supply.
Yes.
They put one of our stickers in everything they mail out. And I appreciate those guys over there. They're in Waco. If you need any art supplies, they'll mail them to you, or you can do curbside pickup, and they may be able to open pretty soon. I don't know. I know that Moroso's is going to open, I think, last night.
They did. I actually saw some photos on their Instagram.
All right. Yeah, they took out a bunch of tables, and they're seating people outside around the fountain. I'm just not ready to get...
A really nice idea to have them out by that. They have a beautiful fountain out front of the restaurant. I kind of want to eat out there without there being a quarantine. That's real nice.
I do too. And when I go back, I want a table by the fountain. They're only taking reservations, so call for a reservation.
Yeah.
And I'm just not ready to go back yet. I'm a big old chicken. I want to see what the numbers do. I'm a numbers guy. Way back in the 90s, even before the internet, I was playing options. I used to get the charts mailed to me every day and would have to follow those. Man, that was so much wasted paper. I kind of hate doing that, but I always enjoyed the numbers and trying to figure out what was going to happen on the graph next.
It's cool.
You can do that with more than just stock options. You can figure out trends in just about everything. There's a pattern to everything. There's a pattern to the chaos, Jonathan.
Pattern to the chaos. Always is. The Fibonacci sequence.
Do you have the email we got from Bridget Florentine? I
Yes,
wonder if she's Italian or if her family was Florentine. That sounds like from Florence.
it does. It does. Yeah, we got an email from her, and she says, "Do you guys have a flow? Do you guys have a flow chart, sort of like a family tree, showing the players in Texas and federal law enforcement and how they relate to the various cases in you? It would sure be helpful."
I wish we did. And
We-
you and I have been talking about that for a long time. Thanks for writing, Bridget. We really appreciate getting these comments in, and we try to answer as many of them as we can.
Yeah.
Jonathan and I are planning on doing something like that. We refer to it as our players list, like in a football program. But we're going to do that, and even with pictures with the little strings and all that. We were going to start working on it when this coronavirus broke out, and now we can't get together to work on it.
yeah, yeah, about that.
Yeah, and so much of our stuff, we've got it all digitized, but it's just easier to work with the paper, and the paper we can photograph and put up on the website and into the podcast easier.
That's true.
But thankfully, Casey, and Casey, she's been with us about 3 months now.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, she started right after Valentine's.
Wow.
Yeah, so she started February 15th. So right at 3 months. And she's learning pretty fast. She's learning our system. And she found us some great articles that we can talk about maybe this episode and perhaps even into the next episode. But anyway, Bridget, we're working on that. And as soon as we can have it, we will have our program up and list of players and who they're connected to, not only how they connect to me, but how they connect to Ruby Ridge and to the Davidians, because it's all parts of the same bunch of deep state thugs within our federal government.
Yep.
People who will look down the scope of a rifle and not care about shooting in the vicinity of a child.
Jeez.
Going back to David and Steve and suicide, why
Yep.
another reason I don't believe it, I've prosecuted arson murder cases before.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, Ed Graff.
505 Angel Fire.
Yeah, I convicted him the first time. And that's not the only fire, arson, murder I've been involved in as an investigator or a prosecutor. And in that kind of extreme heat, not only do the arms shrivel up like this, it's called a pugilistic posture, because all the moisture is sucked out of the muscles and it causes them to contract and come into like this. Pugilist is an old-timey word for a boxer.
Should be an old timey word for a raisin.
Pugilist?
Well, you look like a little raisin the way you're doing that.
Well, no, it just makes their arms come up into like a boxing, because they lose all the moisture in through here, and the head explodes.
Right.
Your brain actually boils, steams or boils until your skull explodes. So you're not going to tell me about exit wounds and entry wounds and stuff like that. Also, we've discussed cognitive bias before.
Oh, sure.
When it comes to the pathologists and other experts.
Right.
And also, you had the heavy hand of the government involved in this. They knew how it was going to turn out, and they knew what they wanted their experts to say, and their experts said what they wanted them to. And that's just the way it is. It's unfortunate that we get so much lie on the witness stand in our courts of law, where people raise their hand and swear to tell the truth. But I'm telling you, if they work for the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, if they're experts being paid by them, oh, please weigh that testimony cautiously, because they have a lot of reason to lie, and they often do.
Yeah. And speaking of lying, oh man, Vic, crazy finds for today's episode. So where we left off on last episode was that we were talking about how the media in Waco and really Central Texas being manipulated to to get this public opinion against you. And so what we found were some really cool articles and stories and even letters to the editor from retired Rangers that we're going to talk about today that helped to fuel and stoke that fire and get this public opinion, turned against you.
Yeah, for real.
So to begin with today, Vic, do you want to start off with this sweet letter you got? So let me go back actually. Here we go. So back on April 27th, a letter to the editor appeared in the Waco Tribune Herald, which is obviously where this all is transpiring, and is written by a retired ranger by the name of Captain E.G. Albers. Do you want me to read some of this letter? Do you remember the letter?
I didn't know Captain Albers. How you say it? Albers. Yeah, Albers. But I do remember, like was my custom back then, turn on the coffee pot. I was the first one up. Then I'd go to the curb, pick up my newspaper. We already have an episode about me sitting out on the curb waiting for the newspaper one night about a year after this.
Yeah.
But I picked it up and went in, poured a cup of coffee, opened it up, and there's this letter staring at me.
Now, how big was this in the paper? Was this like a pretty decent sized thing when it actually was printed?
Well, it was on the editorial page, and they print the letters on there. It's in the first section of the editorial section, and it's not big, but a lot of people read them.
Sure.
A lot of people would read what the editors would write, and they would read the letters to the editors. And when I got to the office, I had been mailed a copy of a Xerox copy of the letter. So not only do we have the article, the newspaper that's got it, but we have the letter itself. Yeah.
We do indeed.
It's got his signature on it.
So this was like you said, an old retired Texas Ranger. And you said you never knew who he was personally. You'd never heard the name.
No, but by this time, we're going to see in this episode how Colonel Jim Adams had his propaganda machine running, man. And he was pulling out all the stops. The old Texas Rangers, criminal defense lawyers in Waco. We talked before about how they were, after they found out that I was investigating or going to investigate the task force, they even arranged to have David Spence, the guy we convicted on the Lake Waco Triple murders. He was already convicted by a jury.
Like two juries.
By two juries, yeah. And they had arranged to have his criminal defense lawyer, Russ Hunt, come down to Georgetown, and Henry Lucas was going to confess to the Lake Waco murders. They were conspiring to get me so bad that they were willing to let a vicious, violent murderer out of prison, just like they did Scotty Scott. Now, Albers is real concerned about the jury system when it comes to Lucas, but he wasn't at all concerned about the jury system when it came to Scotty Scott or to David Spence and Gilbert and Tony Melendez. This would have put all of those people back out on the streets. And these were not the first crimes they had committed and not the first violent crimes they had committed.
Right.
It was just awful.
Well,
you want to read some of this? You want me to, or we can switch paragraphs.
In the past several weeks, news stories in the Waco Tribune Herald regarding Henry Lee Lucas are sickening.
Sickening.
The Tribune Herald, I believe, has reported the news as it has been received. However, it appears that some politicians have made this a political football and fed this information to all the news media with the intent to further their political desires and careers at the expense of the Texas Rangers and law enforcement officers who have had an interest in investigating unsolved murders.
Yeah, some politicians. I wonder who he's talking about here.
There you go.
I heard that phrase political football a lot. They accused us of using Lucas as a political football. I don't really know what that means. But claiming that we fed information to the news media with the intent to further our political desires. This ended my politics. This ended my political desires. It ended my political career. After I saw how dirty it was, I just wanted to get out. I just had to rest.
Well, let me ask you this too, Vic. So they're saying that you were trying to use this to boost yourself up even higher. You know, you'd already done the Lake Waco murders. You know, you already had a very good standing as a phenomenal prosecutor and as a phenomenal DA. You know, it's not like you needed this as another step in the rung ladder to get higher to, you know, whatever you were aspiring for, attorney general, what have you. So I'm just curious, why would they even bring that up? I mean, it just makes no sense that they would try to make that the scapegoat for you to act like this.
It's an easy allegation to make. You know, what were I going to do? Stand up and say, no, wait a minute. They're already talking about me running for AG. No, wait a minute. Our congressman already told me I turned out more people at the fundraiser since Franklin Roosevelt had been to town. You know, I mean, come on. No, if I had wanted it, it would have been mine back then. I was personal friends with Ann Richards. I was also personal friends with Jim Maddox, and they didn't get along with each other. But I got along with everybody, except for the really right-wing conservative Rush Limbaugh types like Tom Pauken. And his name is going to come up more and more and more too, because remember when I couldn't remember what his title was?
Yeah.
He was chairman of the Republican Party here in Texas for a while.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he was. Ran for some offices unsuccessfully, political offices. He had run against Maddox unsuccessfully. And that was another reason he had an axe to grind with Maddox.
Right.
So they start out with these old retired Rangers, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. We've already talked about Charles Duncan and him coming to town. This is a 2-page letter.
It is. This guy's, he took some time.
Yeah. I don't believe he wrote it myself. I think somebody down at DPS wrote it for him. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Cox had written this. Although at that time, Mike Cox was still working for the Austin American Statesman. Well, I take that back. He was getting paid by the Austin American Statesman, but he was actually working for Colonel Jim Adams. He was carrying his water on everything. Everything. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, so that's paragraph 1. So he continues on and says, on April 23rd, 1985, the press conference that Henry Lucas was allowed to hold was a very cheap shot that these politicians were using to further their desires at the expense of the Texas Rangers' reputation.
Counter allegations. That's what it is. It's part of their technique. We'll just point the finger back at them and accuse them of everything wrong to take the light off of us. And that's what they were doing.
This next paragraph is one of my favorites. Rangers Prince and Smith are outstanding examples of Christian men with integrity and a sincere dedication to making Texas a better place to live for law-abiding citizens. I have worked with these men and know that they would not stoop to providing any murder suspect with information in order to obtain a conviction or clear a case.
Well, they did, didn't they, John? I mean, we've got the paperwork, we got the video, we got the audio.
They did do that.
They did. They did it. They did it. They did it, Cap Malvers. And we have the proof. We've played some of it.
Fine examples of Christian men.
Yeah. So I guess he was saying, even though I was an ordained minister, even though I was preaching in a different church every month, that I wasn't a Christian. But these guys are real Christian men, and they ain't going to do nothing like that. So take his word for it. This is another one of those things that you just don't cross the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
I mean, they were a legend then. And if you cross the Texas Rangers, well, you were going to be dehumanized. Just like they dehumanized the Mexican population, the American Indian population, the black population, the poor population, or anybody they didn't get along with. I mean, the book coming out, well, it's already out. Cult of Glory. Yeah, pick up that book, Cult of Glory.
Swanson, Cult of Glory. And I think we have a link on our website to that. or to Penguin or whoever's publishing it. We have a link to
We have a link.
get it.
But he says that these guys are such Christians and they would never stoop to doing that. Well, Casey found us this. We're going to post this on our website. This is an article that didn't come out until June of '85. So this was 2 months later.
Right.
But here's Ranger Clayton Smith admitting that he gave information to Lucas. Ranger Clayton Smith of Austin said he used to refresh Lucas's memory by providing him with peripheral information about the slayings. And if Lucas could not give facts of the or details, and if the offense report contained photographs of the victims, the writer, Smith, would show him the photographs. Here's Clayton Smith admitting he showed the photographs. And this was admitted not to the newspaper. They got this from a memo that they got through Open Records that Clayton Smith had written to Colonel Jim Adams.
Oh.
So even when Colonel Jim Adams was saying, we didn't feed them information, and even when Jim Boutwell was saying, well, that's a damn lie, here's Clayton Smith admitting it.
Yeah.
You know, and Clayton, I kind of liked him. I really did. The little I knew of him, I tell you, he had been shot in the head, I believe, and had some trouble recovering from that, and may have had some cognitive issues. But at least here, he told the truth to his boss. He may not have known that the newspaper was going to get a hold of it, but right here, June 17th, 1985.
Yeah.
This says something else interesting too, because we get the question sometimes, why did they go after you, Vic, and not go after Jim Maddox? Well, Maddox had already been through a criminal trial just the year before and was found not guilty. So he was kind of Teflon. But also, this article says Attorney General Jim Maddox and On Again, see if I can read this. It is so small. Attorney General Jim Maddox and On Again, Off Again player in the investigation. On again, off again. By this time, Jim had seen what was happening to me. And just about every time we talked in private, he would say, Vic, we got to figure out a way to get this tar baby off our hands. That's what he called it. He'd do like this. We got to figure out a way to get this tar baby off our hands. And I'm going, no, Jim, we got to figure out a way to bring this to a conclusion. We've got to fix it. Before the grand jury had even come back, before the Scotty Scott case had even been discussed by the grand jury, Jim was saying to the press, we don't have any evidence that the Texas Rangers committed any crimes. Well, we hadn't looked at all the evidence yet.
Right.
Now, by the time that, and he's quoted in this article as saying that, now by the time that the grand jury came back and we started hearing some of this, Jim started getting convinced that they had committed some crimes. But at the same time, politically, he wanted that tar baby off our hands because he was going to run for governor. And he did run for governor against Ann Richards and lost. Yeah.
It's crazy, man. And of course, the Lucas report still wouldn't come out for quite some time. So that's still quite a ways in the future.
Long time. And that was our compromise. Jim Maddox and I finally decided that the Lucas report would be the way to handle it. And so the grand jury could close and at least save face a little. Because I'm telling you, it was a really big shock to me that day when the plug got pulled on our grand jury. Because we needed at least 4 more weeks.
Really?
And so
to testify.
Sorry?
You still had that many more people coming in to testify?
Yes, and documents. But the plug got pulled that day. The grand jury never even got to deliberate on anything. We just had to come in and say, "I'm sorry, guys, it's over. It's over. We're not going to hear anything else. The the judge just pulled the plug on us.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I think I've mentioned before, Colonel Jim Adams came up that day.
Yeah.
And he actually met with Judge George Allen in chambers. And I know that Judge George Allen got a call from Judge Carter in Georgetown, either that day or the day before. Carter, who is now a U.S. congressman. Carter, who is involved in, I think, at least one trial of Lucas. He may have been involved with Michael Morton. I'm not sure. But he may have gone on to Congress by then. I don't know. But he came out of that Georgetown group. And I know that Carter called George Allen that day, Judge George Allen. And there was no change in Judge Allen's mind. I was not allowed in the room. They would not allow me in the room because they said they may be discussing the investigation of me, which was federal. Jan Patterson and Helen Eversberg, the U.S. attorney and her assistant, had deputized all these men as U.S. marshals. They deputized Boutwell, they deputized Prince, they deputized Ron Border, they deputized all of them. And they would say, well, I'm a federal agent now. I don't have to answer your questions. Wow. And that's the way they were acting back in George Allen's chambers. At least that's what Maddox told me later. And Boutwell, Carter, and Colonel Jim Adams, who's the real power in the room, wanted Henry released that day. And I told you, I saw it on the news that night, Henry's head in the back of their car as they drove off, and drove him back to Georgetown and put him in a cold cell, just like in Montague, trying to get him to start confessing again.
Yeah. But that pony was kicked.
Yeah, because he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it.
Was it TDC they dropped him off at? You're all done, Henry. Time to go to jail.
Yeah, after about a week or 10 days, when they couldn't twist his arm into doing it, Boutwell threatened him, and then there they were.
It's crazy.
And the night that I saw his head on the news disappearing in the back of that car, that was the night that Channel 8 started their stuff against me. That was the night that Charles Duncan stood up and started his stuff. Wow. And we found Casey found an article for us. We didn't have to send her to any of the holy sites to look for it. It was actually in our office, although a copy of it is digitized and hidden in a microchip at 13 different holy sites around the world.
Inside of a crystal skull?
Near where they were found. Yeah, but I hope they're hidden better.
Jeez.
But she found a really good article about Charles Duncan coming to town, and you're not going to be surprised who some of the first people he interviewed was. But one of them was Russ Hunt.
Of course.
Defense attorney Russ Hunt, David Spence's lawyer, the guy who was supposed to have gone to Georgetown in April, the April we're talking about.
Right.
And talk to Lucas and get him to confess to the Lake Waco murders.
Right.
Then Prince and them could have said, the only reason Feazell's looking at us and throwing mud at us is because we know that he convicted the wrong people on the Lake murders. Well, see, I know we convicted the right people. Anybody that's got any doubt, read Careless Whispers. Carlton Stowers wrote that book objectively. He sat through the entire trial. So read that, or go online. We'll be posting some of the transcripts later when we get to the Lake Waco murders. Go online and read the transcripts. You will have no doubt. Yeah. And Russ Hunt and some of those guys who just besmirched my name for years about convicting the wrong people and how DNA was going to set them free. And they even got Texas Monthly on their side, which I'm not surprised, because Texas Monthly wrote that suck up article about Bill Johnston. We talked about Bill Johnston last time, all the terrible things he did, not only to me, but to the Davidians.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they write this puff piece on him, but then they write all these negative articles on me about how the DNA is going to prove who the real killer was. Well, they submitted all their suspects and none of it came back.
Correct.
None of it. And I've said this before, and I want to say it again here. You know whose DNA they did not submit?
People who were convicted of the crime.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, if they were really sincere in this and not just trying to pull sneaky, snotty tricks, why didn't they submit their own client's DNA?
Yeah.
Why not?
Then you have people like poor Jason Baldwin, you know, in the West Memphis 3, where their DNA was found this much at the scene.
0.
Oh, it's just crazy, Vic.
It's crazy. It's so unfair.
There is just
So unfair.
bad.
Matter of fact, Hunt, and this is my opinion, okay? But if he wants to sue me over this, go ahead and sue me because I have the documents to prove it.
Yeah.
The only problem with me getting sued is it would put me in a conundrum. I don't know if I would want to file a motion to dismiss and make him pay my attorney's fees for whatever real expensive lawyer I hired to do that for me, because it would be dismissed. Or I could let it go forward and take his deposition. I'd love to take his deposition again.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd love to, because he can't help but commit perjury. He committed perjury in the deposition that he gave in the Below case.
Oh yeah.
We've got his deposition. We've got the proof.
Right.
Now he tried. I can't hear you.
And Below case, of course, being the one where you won your Guinness World Book of Records.
Yeah.
So when we reference Below for a new listener, that's one where Vic won all of his money before the IRS took it away. Well, that's
anyway, Russ Hunt tried to cover this up after he was caught by saying, "Well, I just didn't remember. I didn't remember." But look at this. Can you see that? Oh, it's backwards.
lawyer lied in deposition. What world?
Lawyer lied in deposition, Feazell's attorney says. Well, that was Gary Richardson. In a deposition that Hunt gave last year, and this article is from 1991. This was long after Lucas, long after I was found not guilty. This is during the Below trial in 1991. So this was 5 or 6 years later. But in a deposition that Hunt gave last year, he said he did not remember meeting Duncan in person and cannot recall the specifics of their telephone conversation. However, Richardson said that Duncan shot about 2 hours of videotaped interviews on the Lake Waco murder cases, with Hunt appearing on camera in his office for about 45 minutes with Duncan. Now, come on. They have to come in. He brings his cameraman with him. Cameras were big back in those days. He had to set up the camera, probably set up lights, interviewed him for 45 minutes, and Russ Hunt says he doesn't remember. Richardson also showed notes written by Charles Duncan that the former reporter surrendered during trial preparation or the discovery process. The note was marked "File, Lake Waco Murders from Russ Hunt, lunch, 7/26/85. So on July 26, 85, while all this was going on, right after we had messed up Russ Hunt's chance to get a confession out of Henry that Henry had done the Lake Waco murders.
Yeah.
Because that was in April. So here he is in July meeting with Charles Duncan and talking about the Lake Waco murders. So his appointment in Georgetown was messed up because we got Henry away from him the day before. And we had no idea that was going on. So his appointment was done with Lucas was messed up. And then April, May, June, couple months, July, 3 months later, he's being interviewed in his office by Duncan.
Dun, dun, dun.
Gary Richardson says, "I'm fairly disturbed about this lawyer's testimony under oath," Richardson told the judge. "In my 20 years as an attorney, I don't think I've ever seen a lawyer so blatantly lie under oath, and I think this is a disgrace to our profession."
Yee.
I think this may have been somebody else Gary was deposing, but it may have been Hunt when he said, "Oh, Mr. Hunt, you're the kind of lawyer that gives the rest of us a bad name, aren't you?"
Yikes.
I think that was him. That might have been one of the a different lawyer,
Yeah.
one of the ones that testified against me in the trial.
But what you have is a series of people trying to find the easy way out. Trying to find the point of least resistance. And they got caught, and so this is how they acted instead of going puppy belly up like Vic would do.
They just lie about it.
Yeah,
It says Hunt and Feazell first locked horns when Hunt was appointed to represent David Wayne Spence, who is on death row for his role in the 1982 murders of Jill Montgomery, Raylene Rice, and Kenneth Franks. Feazell prosecuted the case, and there's been bad blood between the two men ever since. Well, yeah, just because Russ went crazy. I mean, we started calling Russ Hunt Russ simply because he would always say, David simply didn't do it. David simply didn't do it. So we called David Spence David simply and Russ Hunt Russ simply because he used that word so much. He just simply didn't do it. Well, he simply did. Russ even said that he let David Spence babysit his children. Whoa.
Well,
see, now I know Russ Jr. Russ Jr. is a lawyer down in Austin. He's actually a pretty good lawyer. He really is. He wins some cases. He's out there trying all the time. Now, Russ is either just a flat out liar, or he's totally senile. Even back in 1991, when this article came out, he'd have been senile. So he must really be senile today, or else he's a liar. Yeah. One or the other. Hunt steadfastly maintained Spence's innocence.
Of course.
When told today of Richardson's comments, Hunt said, "I apologize to Miss Richardson, but I can only remember what I can remember." Well, that's bullshit, Russ. I still cannot tell you if I met with Charles Duncan. If he says I had a 45-minute on-camera interview with him, maybe I did. I have a number of people with cameras interview me, but I can't remember all of them. Well, I bet you can, Russ. Go ahead and start listing them, because you haven't been interviewed that much on camera except during the Lake Waco murders. And he would remember this because it was about me. And he would remember this because it was right after his little meeting with Lucas had the rug pulled out from under it.
Right.
He would remember this. So this is just a bunch of bull.
That's a damn lie.
So what they were doing, Jonathan, was that they were going to go after me and indict me for stepping on the wrong toes.
Right.
Even if it meant setting David Spence and the Melendez brothers free. All because I offended Jim Adams. Richardson and Feazell claim that Duncan's apparent attempt to discredit Feazell by trying to prove that Feazell framed Spence is more evidence of his mindset and proof that Duncan was on a mission to destroy Feazell's reputation with a one-sided, preconceived storyline. A Duncan memo to his supervisors in October 1985 about his Lake Waco murder close-up said that the script was not for air until mid-November, pending indictments.
Crazy.
So in 1985, he said, we're not going to air this about the Lake Waco murders until Feazell has been indicted. So in 1980, and I wasn't indicted until 1986.
Right.
I mean, they were trying so hard to find something, anything on me, and they couldn't find anything until they twisted a bunch of arms and got some people to lie. So that's why I don't mind. We promised way back there we'd be naming names. And we're naming names and telling what happened. And if any of you guys disagree, we'll let you on the show. Or sue me and I'll take your damn deposition. I'd like that better.
There you go.
Yeah. Hunt's not going to do that. I've already offered to debate Hunt. back before this coronavirus thing came out, I offered to pay for renting the Hippodrome because I felt like we could fill it up if Russ Hunt and I debated each other on the Lake Waco murders, because I have all the evidence to prove, again, that David Spence and the Melendez boys did that murder, those 3 murders.
Yeah.
And he's got nothing except rattling his mouth and lying. And if he's caught on stage lying, you know, maybe he'd have to admit it, but I doubt it.
No.
You know? So he just flat refused. And then he got one of his little mini-me's to write me some nasty emails. It was Russ Hunt that put that email on the McLennan County criminal law listserv that he was not going to watch The Confession Killer. It was, I can't remember his word, but it was not abhorrent, but something like that. It would appall him to see Netflix making me look good.
Ooh.
That was Russ.
Man.
And he's also spread false lies that we tried to arrest him or indict him or file on him for contempt during the Lake Waco murder case. And he had one of his little mini-me's write me about that. And I said, send me the proof. Send me the proof. You know, he even claimed I filed a grievance on him. You know, the state bar keeps records.
They do.
So I said, get those records from Russ Hunt and send it to him. I'm not going to mention Mini-Me's name because I asked him to pray about all of this. He wrote me back the next day, said, I've prayed about this and I still believe the same thing. Well, I didn't write him back because I knew he hadn't prayed. If he had prayed, his mind would be a little more open.
Yeah.
I understand prayer. Yeah, I understand prayer and also understand hypocrites. Just, Jesus understood prayer and Jesus understood hypocrites. He liked prayer. He didn't like hypocrites. Same here. I don't like hypocrites. And so Mini-Me, if you're listening to this, go do your praying. Go do your praying. And then let's be friends.
There you go.
There you go. I'd still be friends with Russ Hunt if he'd get sane.
Funny, so back to this letter by this former Texas Ranger. There's a couple of paragraphs that I simply adore in this, and then we can skedaddle on from this. But one paragraph I found interesting is this. He says, keep in mind that Lucas has been convicted of 10 killings in Texas and faces death by injection. How can anyone question the criminal justice system and the decisions of 10 state district courts involving 120 jurors who have tried and convicted Lucas and their beliefs beyond a reasonable doubt that Lucas was guilty of these murders?
Well, you know that's not true. There wasn't 10 juries. There wasn't 120 jurors. There were 2 juries. And both times, Henry told him to convict him.
Yeah.
Both times, he said he was guilty. And the other 10 were just guilty pleas in front of a judge.
Right. So
he's even got his facts wrong about this.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. It's like, not sure it transpired quite like that. And
no, and they didn't mind questioning the 3 juries. 3 juries that had returned guilty verdicts on Lake Waco murder defendants.
Right.
Waco, tried him in Waco, tried one in Bryan College Station, then tried Deeb up in Cleburne. Mm-hmm. Up in Cleburne, I was trying Deeb when Jan Patterson came to see me and told me to stay out of the Lucas thing. That was in February, right before all this started in April. Gosh, that was a busy year.
And then here's my favorite. This is real meat. It says, to me, to attack the Texas Rangers' reputation on the word of an indicted and convicted killer makes no more sense than attacking the great American tradition of baseball, apple pie, and motherhood. Damn, Vic, you must really hate America.
Yeah. I told you somebody had said that, and I'm glad Casey finally found the letter.
There it is. That's
accusing me of attacking America, motherhood. Where is it? Apple pie, baseball.
It's a shame because what they did is they clearly found things that would trigger the average person to dislike you, to say, well, he is attacking something I hold near and dear to me. I don't like that guy anymore, Feazell. He's attacking things I find is my foundation. So that's what it was. It was the triggering. And we talked about it in our last episodes, how you manufacture the consent. You pull people's strings to where they will become reactive. And at that point, once you got them reactive, then you got them malleable, and you can form any opinion you want in their minds. And that's what this kind of stuff was. It was not just Vic is against a very select few Texas Rangers, which is really what it was. It was a group of bad apples. They made it to where you were against all of them. And even further, you're against law enforcement. And even further, you were against the American way. Ugh.
Even apple pie, man.
And I love apple pie. It's a shame. So it's just a fascination, Vic. And again, this was still in April of 85.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy how this month just kept going. But at least now through these last few episodes, you can see how it mounted. The pressure cooker was really getting to where it was about to cook a little Vic roast.
Well, I tell you, it was getting hot. It was getting hot. I could feel the flames licking at me, man. I really could. I could see the shadow of it coming at me.
So when you read that in the paper, Vic, how did you feel? Was this the same old narrative, or was it like
no?
I'm really starting?
No, I felt awful. I felt awful because I saw that people weren't getting it. I saw that their PR machine was beating the truth. I didn't have a PR machine. I was just doing the best I could, and it was me standing on the courthouse steps telling it like it is. And Jim Adams, he had all these people working for him, plus he had his media contacts at Channel 8. He had Tom Pauken. He had Mike Cox. Mike Cox was just a whore for DPS. He was. I mean, it didn't matter. I mean, if they went out and shot somebody in the head unarmed, he'd have figured out a way to make it okay.
Yeah.
You know, just like they still do today. I mean, we have another instance of an unarmed black man getting shot to death.
And Vic, that one really pisses me off. I actually saw the video of it this past week. Oh, it's so shameful, man.
It's shameful.
So sad.
It's shameful. It's racist. It's hateful. But it goes back to police training. We need to scrap all the police training and start over, and not train them to be commandos, not train them to be Navy SEALs. We need to train them to be more like social workers and psychologists and people who know how to de-escalate instead of just go in and body slam somebody to the floor and break their back or shoot them in the head when they're unarmed. You know, and we were talking last week about why it is that a black policeman will kill an unarmed black man.
Yeah.
But that's because when he's got that uniform on, he's in his training. He's not thinking about his upbringing as a black man, as a black person. He's not sympathizing with the community. No, he's seeing that us against them training that's just been beat into his head, and it's a conditioning. It's a mental conditioning that we've got to change, or we're going to see much more of this. Hi, I'm Vic Feazell. During these trying times, you might want to just stay home. And at the law offices of Vic Feazell, we understand. That's why we're set up to handle your personal injury claim without you even having to come in. Just give us a call, and we'll take it from there. We can send any paperwork straight to your smartphone or computer. Don't delay, because if we don't put money in your pocket, you don't owe us anything. I'm Vic Feazell.